everybody, and welcome to our webinar tonight. I'm going to bring up my little PowerPoint here to get started with. This is our webinar for April 2015 for My Decorative Quilter 2. I'm real excited about this next set of webinars that we're going to do. We've always kind of called it Block of the Month or Project of the Month, but what we've done in the past has pretty much been projects. So we haven't actually done any quilts. For the most part, we've done some table runners, we've done some placemats and tote bags and coasters and things that use quilting techniques, and of course using My Decorative Quilter, but we've never actually made a quilt. And we're going to change that now because the next 6 weeks, or next 6 months rather, we are going to do a block every month. So we're going to do a total of 6 blocks. Each block that we're going to do is going to feature a different quilting technique and different things that you can do with My Decorative Quilter 2. And then when we get to the 6th block, when we're done, we will be taking all of those blocks and putting them into a wall hanging. So you'll see more about that as we go along tonight. But I just want to mention that all of these projects and blocks are designed by Rita Gazard and presented by myself. My name is Mark Garetz, and I'm a National Floriani educator. So I'm going to go to the next screen, which I always like to do. I always like to show you what the finished project is going to look like. In this case, a finished block. And we call this faux piecing. And just to give you a little heads up, what we mean by faux piecing is that what we've created is the look of a pieced block, but we've only done it with a single piece of fabric. And we've created the pieces, or the look of the pieces, by using textures that are built into the software and different thread colors to create that illusion of piecing. Now, we did this last year in a project, and we turned it into a tote bag. This is the first time we're actually taking the principle and applying it to an actual quilt block. So this is what it looks like, and I'm going to go ahead and close this presentation right now, and we're going to go right into our software instructions. And if you haven't already, you want to go ahead and open up My Decorative Quilter 2. Before I get into the software, let me just tell you that you're going to be able to download this webinar in a couple days or sooner as a video, but even right now you can download the project files, and we really hope that you will download those files because in there are the printed instructions, and it really helps to be able to follow along with those printed instructions and this video at the same time. In fact, there's one point in this where you'll probably pretty much absolutely need to do that. So first step, if you're watching this not live, is to go back and download those instructions and print them out and come back and continue on the video. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our work area to make sure that we're all on the same page, both literally and figuratively. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that we are in inches. So if you don't see this, if you see a blank gray screen, come up here and click on the new design icon to create a new page. And you should see this page here with your grid or not. It doesn't really matter for this project. But you should be in inches mode. So up here in this corner, you will see the word inches. If yours says metric or millimeters, you want to right-click on your ruler. So come up to the top ruler here and right-click on it and select inches mode. And when you do that, you will change into inches mode. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our grid settings are correct. So what you want to do is right-click again, and you want to make sure that Snap to Grid is turned on. And the default for your grid settings should look like this. It should be at 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. So if you have something different, you want to come in and set your grid spacing to 0.25 and 0.25 on the horizontal and the vertical, and then click OK. And again, Snap to Grid is turned on. If you haven't changed it from the default in MDQII, this is what it will be. So if you haven't changed it, don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and get started by selecting a block from our block library, and we're going to take that block as a template to modify and add our stitches. We do that by coming up here to our upper left-hand corner to our select block icon, which is right here. Click that, and you're going to get a window that opens up and showing you the first folder of blocks, which is album blocks. Now, it so happens that we're going to be using album blocks, so we're not going to change it. But if we were going to go to a different block library, you would click the down arrow and select a different block library. But we're going to stay here in album blocks. We're going to come down to our size, and if this isn't set to 6 by 6, you want to click the down arrow and set it to 6 by 6 inches. So select your block at 6 by 6, and we're going to use album block number 4. So come over here to album block number 4, which is right here. Simply click on it, and it's going to open up that album block in your design window. Now I'm going to show you a shortcut, which is very, very useful. I've shown it to you lots of times, but just to show it to you again, and that is if you double click on your zoom tool or the magnifying glass over here, that's what we call zoom to fit. So it's going to make this block bigger, and I'm going to go ahead and double click over here to make it bigger, to make it a little bit easier for you to see at home on your screen. So this is our block. Now each of the pieces of this block is a piece of artwork. So there's an artwork triangle here, an artwork triangle here, a diamond here in the center. And artwork, as you know from our previous webinars, doesn't stitch. These are like the outlines that tell us where we can stitch in between and to show us some sample colors of what things might look like. But these won't stitch. But these are the way all the blocks are. And this allows us to manipulate these and turn them into stitches and other things, which is what we're going to be doing in this webinar tonight. If you look over here in your sequence view, when you bring in the block, everything is selected. You can see that all items are selected, and you can see these little triangles here, or excuse me, rectangles here to show that everything is selected. We're going to work with this center piece right here, the diamond. Now there's multiple ways to select it, but tonight's webinar we're going to be selecting everything using the sequence view. That's a very powerful way to select things, and so we're killing two birds with one stone here. We're trying to teach you how to use it and also make it simpler on the presenter, which is me. So I'm going to click this first item in our sequence view to select that diamond, and you can see right here it shows us that that's the diamond artwork that we're selecting. So I've got that selected. I can tell it's artwork because if I look over here in my properties box, you can see right here it says artwork, and there's no stitches or anything. But we're going to change that real quick here because we're going to apply a texture fill to this artwork, and we are going to fill this area with that texture fill. Now, if you're used to FDCU or the old MDQ, when you did that, when you clicked on one of these convert to icons down at the bottom, which is what we're going to be using a lot tonight. So, for example, if I click on this texture, it would literally have converted this artwork into the texture fill stitches. So the artwork would go away because it would be replaced by the texture fill. MDQII works a little differently, and it's actually a pretty cool feature. If you start out with artwork and you click on one of the stitch conversions, it's not actually going to delete the artwork. It's going to copy it and then turn it into stitches and put them at the bottom of the sequence view. So I'm going to show you that right now. I'm going to come down here and we're going to click on texture, and you can see that it added an item down here and selected it for us. So this is the default texture that comes up. It's texture 242. Don't ask me why it starts with 242 and not some lower number, but that's what it does. So it starts at 242, and we're actually going to change it. We're going to use texture number 251. So I'm going to click the down arrow in this box here, and I'm going to come down to 251, and I'm going to select that. Now, nothing happened over here because I haven't clicked apply yet. Remember, nothing you change over here happens until you click apply. So we've changed it to a different texture. But we're also going to take this opportunity to change the pattern size because this is a little bit big for this particular piece of the block. So we're going to change it to 7 millimeters. So I'm going to do that by taking my cursor and highlighting the 15 millimeters. I'm going to type in a 7 and click apply. And that's going to give me a tighter pattern over here. It's a little bit difficult to see. If I click off of it, maybe you can see it a little bit better. So you can see it's got black stitches now. I'm going to click on top of that again to select it. Okay? Now what we're going to do next is we're actually going to change where this starts and stops stitching. And we're going to do this throughout this project tonight. We're actually going to move our start and stop stitch points a lot. To see where it's going to start and stop stitching, for that we use our shape tool, and it's the second icon down over here on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and click the shape tool icon. When I do that, you can see my selection changes. I've got a green dot. That green dot represents where our start point is, so our stitching is going to start right there. The red dot, this indicates where our stitching is going to stop. And lastly, I've got these inclination lines right here. So I've got a line running this way. This is also known as an angle line. So this is going to control the direction of the pattern that this is going to stitch. We're not going to be changing our inclination lines tonight at all, but we are going to be changing where our start and stop points are. So we actually want this to start or stop actually over in this corner. Where it starts for this particular block really doesn't matter. So we're going to leave that alone. We're going to move our stop point right over to here. Now you see as I get close to the stop point, you see that my cursor changes and has that little red dot by it. That means if I click now with that red dot showing, even though I'm not right on top of it, if I click now and drag this point, I'm going to select that point. So I'm going to come right on top of it. I'm going to select and click and drag, and it'll only allow me to drag it along the outside. So I'm going to drag it over here into this corner, so my stop point is actually right there. Okay? And that's going to lock that in. We're now going to create our faux piecing for the second set of items, and to do that, we're going to come back to our sequence view, and we're going to select our second set of artwork. So I'm just going to click right here, and you can see the shape right here corresponds to these dark navy triangles here. So these triangles are the ones that are represented right here, and we are going to, since we've got them all selected, apply our faux piecing to all of them at the same time. We're going to do it exactly the same way. Come down to our texture icon, click the texture icon. It's going to apply that same default pattern in there, and this time we're going to change to pattern number 280. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click my down arrow. I'm going to scroll down to where I can see pattern number 280. I'm going to select that. Again, we're going to change our pattern size to 7 millimeters. So I'm going to change that to a 7 and click apply. And now we've got a tighter, nicer pattern in there. One more time now, we are going to change our start and stop points, but we're going to do it for all 4 items. Those 4 stitch items are right here at the bottom of our sequence view. Right now they're what we call collapsed, meaning that I can only see the top level of this. So I'm seeing all 4. To expand them, that's what this little plus icon does right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and when I scroll down in my sequence view, you can now see that I can see all of those individual fills. So I'm going to select the very first one, so that's this fill right here. And I'm going to click my shape tool again because I want to adjust the start stop points. And what we want to do is we want our start point and our stop point to be both at the top. So our stop point's already there. Our start point is not. So I'm going to click and drag that up to the top and put it over the top. Now when I let off the mouse, you can see that my green start point is hidden. It's really still there. In fact, if I put the mouse, you can see that it's green. That would tell me that that's exactly what it would select, not the red stop point. We see the red stop point on top because it's the last thing to stitch out. But that's okay for this example. We want it to start and stop there. So we're going to move on to our second fill. I'm going to select it here in my sequence view. And the idea is we want to end our stitching of one piece and move on to the next piece with the shortest path possible. So we want to start our stitching on this block or piece where this one ended, and it ended right here. So I'm going to click my shape tool one more time, and you can see that my start point is not in the right place. So I'm going to click and drag that down to here. So now that's going to start where this block ended off. And we want to kind of go in a clockwise, so we're going to go from this block to this block over here. So I'm going to move my stop point over here. So now I'm going to start here and end here. That'll give me a short path to go right into here. In fact, it'll just stitch right into here without trimming or jumping or anything. So once again, I'm going to click my third item, click my shape tool, move my start and stop points. Again, I want to start over here where my other one ended. I'm going to stop down here where I'm going to go down into the next one. I'm going to click my last item, and I am going to once again click the shape tool. I'm going to move my stop point first, because if I move my start point, I'm going to cover up my stop point. So I'm going to move my stop point down first, down to the bottom here where I want to end. And then I'm going to move my start point up here where I want to start. And that completes our manipulation of that set of pieces. I'm going to scroll back up to the top of my sequence view again. And this time I'm going to select the fourth item down. I'm going to click on it. So that selects these lighter blue triangles here. And we are going to, once again, convert those into a texture fill by clicking our texture icon at the bottom. This time, we are going to select pattern number 259. So I am going to click the down arrow, scroll down to where I can see 259, click 259. This one we think looks best at 6 millimeters rather than 7, so we're actually going to change that to 6 and click Apply. And now I've got my pattern in here. And we are once again going to repeat our start and stop point, moving by expanding this stitch item, scrolling down. Now, before we do that, we want this to stitch out in a different order in the way that these pieces are going to stitch out. So it's going to start with this one right here right now, which is up here. We actually want it to start out down at the bottom, because that's where we kind of left off here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sequence view by dragging and dropping these triangles around to change the order in which they are going to stitch. So I can do that a couple different ways, but the way I'm going to show you how to do it is simply by dragging and dropping. So I want this to stitch out at the very top of this sequence. If I drag it up to right here, it's actually going to put it right below it. So in order to get that to happen, I actually drag it up above, which is way up here, and let off. And then you can see that it now puts it first. So that's going to stitch out first. We want this one, which is our new third item, to stitch out second. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to drag it up to the first item. Remember, it's going to put it below it. So now we have the proper stitch sequence. I'm going to select them one at a time. So you can see I've got the bottom one stitching out first. I'm going to go clockwise around to the next one, and the next one, and finally the last one. So that's the order I want them to stitch out. Now I'm going to adjust my start and stop points like we did before. So I am going to click my shape tool one more time. I've selected the top item, and I want this one to start down here where the last one stopped. So I'm going to move my start point over here. I want it to end down here in this corner, so I'm going to move my start point down here. I'm going to continue on with the second fill, doing the same thing. I'm going to grab my shape tool, and I want to start down here close to where this one ended. This one's going to probably do a jump or cut because it's quite a bit of a travel, but we want to travel as little as possible. And we also then want to move our stop point, or actually we don't want to move our stop point. It's actually already in a good place. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to select our third fill, which is right here. Go back to our shape tool. We're going to start over here at the top. So I'm going to move over just a little bit here. And again, our stop point is in a pretty good place. So we're going to go ahead and leave that there. And then we're going to do our last one. We're going to click our shape tool. And it's not selected. Why isn't it selected? There we go. Okay, I'm going to click my shape tool. And it probably was selected. I apologize. I was looking down here and didn't see anything. I was looking in the wrong place. Now, this one presents a little bit of a challenge because we want to put our start point up here. Excuse me. We want to put our start point up here, put our stop point down here. So we kind of want to swap them. So to do this, we're going to do a couple of moves. We're going to move our start point up to about here. It really doesn't matter. We're just getting it out of the way. Now we're going to move our stop point down here. And then finally, we're going to come back and finish by moving our start point all the way up to the top. All right, so that completes adding our faux piecing. and adjusting all of our start and stop points to get a nice stitch sequence. The next thing we want to do is we need to add some quilting stitches, and by that I mean stitches that are going to hold our quilt sandwich together. The way this is going to stitch out, as you'll see when we get to the assembly instructions, is that we're going to hoop up the top fabric and our batting. We're going to stitch all of this out that we've just created, and it's going to stitch through the batting and the top fabric, but nothing's going to be there to hold our backing fabric on, so we need to add some quilting stitches to do that. And we're going to do that manually by using our run stitch tool. Now this is where your printed instructions come in, because the click sequence that I'm going to do next is shown for you in those printed instructions. You can try to follow along. It's not a hard sequence if you don't have the printed instructions, but trust me, it'll be a lot clearer if you have the numbers that show up in the printed instructions. So to create those run stitches, we're actually going to digitize some run stitches. I've used the scary D word, but don't worry, it's really easy. We're going to use our run stitch tool up here. We're going to click the run stitch tool. Now don't confuse that with this run stitch tool down here. We're actually going to create run stitches. So it's this tool up here in the top. And we've got our snap to grid turned on. So as I click these points, I don't need to get right exactly on the point where I need to stitch, because my snap to grid is going to do most of the work for me by snapping to the exact right point on this block. So I'm going to start right down here, which is point number 1, and I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to come up to point number 2, which is right here, and I'm going to come down here and click point number 3. I'm going to come up here to point number 4. Down here, or excuse me, across is point number 5, point number 6, point number 7 is up here, point number 8 is right here, 9 is out here, and 10 is out here, and finally 11 is right here. And you can see kind of what I'm doing is we're outlining the blocks. Now we're going to come up here to 12. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to come all the way down, back down to here to point number 13. And I'm going to come out here to point number 14, down here to 15. I'm going to come all the way down out here to 16, finally up here to 17, and our very last point is to come back to our start point, which is number 1, which is also point 18. Click, and then while we're here, we're going to now right-click. Right-clicking tells the software that we've finished entering those run stitches. So we've just digitized our quilting stitches. Now that wasn't very hard, was it? If I scroll down to the bottom of my sequence view, you can see here's the run stitches that I've added into it. Okay, so I want you to come down and select those run stitches now, because we are going to modify them a little bit. So the first thing we want to do is we want to change our stitch length. The default for it is 3 millimeters. We're going to change it to 2.5 to get a little bit tighter stitch. So I'm going to select it, change to 2.5, and click Apply. The next thing we want to do is, remember our stitching sequence, we're going to stitch out all of these fill stitches. Then we want the machine to stop right here so we can take the hoop out, put our backing fabric on, put the hoop back in the machine, and start up again. To do that, we're going to put in a color change here. You don't actually need to change the color of thread, but we're going to actually put in a color change just to trick the machine into stopping. So just pick any other color down here in your color design palette. I'm going to go ahead and pick this jade color, but again, it really doesn't matter what you pick. So you can now see I've got a new thread color here. And the next thing we're going to do, we are going to create some basting stitches. So we want to create a basting stitch that runs all the way around the edge of the block. But before we do that, we actually need to transform the size of this block, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if we look at this block, it's going to be a 6 by 6 inch block. But we're going to stitch this out in a 150 millimeter hoop. And 6 inches is actually just a tiny bit bigger than 150 millimeters. So if you send this to your machine just like this, it's going to give you an error, say it can't stitch it. So we're going to actually reduce the size of everything to 150 millimeters. To do that, we're going to scroll up to the top of our sequence view. We're going to click All Items, which is a shortcut way of selecting everything. So we're going to click All Items. we're going to come up here to our transform box, and you can see that it's set right now to 6 inches, and yours will probably look like this. Now we want to be in millimeters. Now a really new cool feature of the software is if we wanted to see this in millimeters, we would have had to come back over to our ruler here, change our measurements to metric, so we'd see this displayed in metric. We no longer have to do that because we now have a convenient way to change just this particular properties box into metric by clicking millimeters right here. So I'm going to click millimeters, and you can see when I do that, our width and height change. Now, these could be identical. They could be off just a little bit. You can see they're off by 1/10 of a millimeter, not that big of a deal. But you can see this one says 152.5, this one's 152.4. Pick the largest one. It's probably going to be the width up here. Select it and type over it 150. If maintain aspect ratio is checked, which is what it should be, you'll see the bottom one changes proportionally. And then go ahead and click apply, and you'll see that the block has now shifted to 150 millimeters max. So this will now stitch out just fine. And now we're going to go create that basting stitch that I talked about earlier. We're going to do that with our run stitch tool one more time. So come up and select your run stitch. Come up to this corner, the upper left-hand corner. If you want, you can click right along the edge of the quilt block, but I'm going to tell you right now that if you do that, it's not going to go right there because, again, we'll have snap to grid on. So it's actually going to snap out here, but it might actually be easier for you to line it up right here, but you can see how it snapped out to that corner. That's okay. Don't worry about it. We're just going to click right in the corners right here, create our run stitch going around, come back to our beginning point, and then just like we did before, right-click to finish your stitches. Okay? And you can see that that is outside of where we want it to be a little bit, but have no fear, we're going to adjust it just like we did the rest of the quilt. So we're going to come right down here. We're going to select our run stitch, and we are going to come to our transform, and we are going to now change this to 150 as well. It should still be in millimeters from the last step. So we're going to type in 150 into 1, maintain aspect ratios checked, so the bottom one will go along with it. We click apply, and you can see now that that stitch is the right size. Now, one last thing we need to do, this is going to stitch out last the way we have it now, and we need it to stitch out first because it's a basting stitch. So we could drag it all the way up to the top, but an easier way to do that is to right-click on it here in the sequence view. You'll see a brand new menu selection called Move. So if you hover over that or click it, you will see another pop-up, and one of the selections, the very first one, is first, which conveniently enough is exactly where we want to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on first, and you can see it's going to move it right to the top of our sequence. So that's going to stitch out first. It's going to be a different thread color, so it's actually going to stop, and it's all going to be fine. The last thing we need to do is simply save this file. We do that by coming up here to our Save icon and click the Save icon. You can also go to File, Save if you want. You can see I've already been playing with this, so I've already saved it as my faux piecing block. I'm going to save it right over the top for you. Well, if you've downloaded the instructions, you'll also get a sample file so you can see exactly what it's supposed to look like. If you want to cheat, you can just stitch this right out, but we hope that you'll learn the software by following along. So I just renamed it to my faux piecing block. So I'm going to click that to select it and click Save. It's going to warn me saying it already exists. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I do, because I was just playing before. So I've saved that as my WAF file. Always a good idea to get in the habit of saving your work as a WAF. That is your working file. Retains all the information about the stitches and the artwork and all the things that you need. But there isn't a machine in the world that can stitch out this WAF format, so we actually need to save it in our machine format. To do that, we come up to File. We click Save As this time. Now it's going to come up and say WAF again as a default, but we're going to actually change it by the Save As type, change it to a different machine type. So, for example, if I have a Brother or Baby Lock machine, I can change it to PES version 9. You can see I've already done that. I'm going to select that, and it's just going to change that extension to PES and save it. It warns me that I want to replace it. Yes, I do. Then I could go ahead and put that file on a stick. take it over to my machine and stitch it out. So that completes the software section. So let's go ahead and move right on back to our assembly so you can see how this all goes together. So you've seen this file, you've seen this one. Let's just talk about the project a little bit in an overview again. Remember, this is the first of 6 blocks. We're going to produce 1 block per month. To get to the final project, you're going to stitch each block out 4 times. So you're going to make 4 of each one of these blocks. At the end of the 6 months, you'll have 24 blocks. We're going to join them all together to create a 40-inch by 25-inch wall hanging, and we'll have some borders and some joining strips and other things to go on it. So that'll probably be our 7th month project. And the materials list that's going to follow is going to show you the materials that you're going to require, at least most of the materials, for all 24 blocks. But we will highlight some of the things for you that are going to be just for this particular kit. So for example, the first item, Floriani embroidery batting or quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting, you see that there's an asterisk there by it. So that is what we are going to use for this month's project. All right, so you can go ahead and gather up all the rest of the things, but if you want to, you can only get the stuff for this particular project. But you have a choice for this of either the embroidery batting or the quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting. I'll give you a little heads up. Next month is going to use the quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting. There won't be an option, so you probably want to choose that batting or might want to choose that batting for the whole thing. That's up to you. Next, you're going to need some nylon no-show mesh stabilizer. You want the non-fusible version, and any color will do. Doesn't really matter, but you want the non-fusible, and we're going to use that this time as well. Soon, we're going to be using wet and gone stabilizer, but not right away. You'll need embroidery thread, and you want to choose some colors that work well with your fabric choices. You'll see that in the next slide. We'll definitely need that for this particular month's project. You'll need some embroidery perfection tape this month. Eventually, you'll need some wet and gone tacky tape, some applique wonder tape, the Floriani Heatcraft tool, and for every single month, you're going to need that 6x6 or 150 millimeter hoop size. So for fabric, again, this is the bill of materials for the entire 24-month project, or 24-block project. It's not going to take 24 months. I'm sorry. For the top fabric, you're going to choose 3 to 5 fabrics that look nice together. You can see over on the right, those are the fabrics that Rita chose to stitch out with. So it's up to you. You can choose similar looking fabrics or completely different fabrics. You're going to need at least 1/4 yard of each. Now, if you only choose 3 fabrics, don't think you're only going to need 3/4 of a yard. You're going to need 1.25 yards total, so just keep that in mind. If you repeat a fabric, repeat it with another 1/4 yard. For the backing fabric, which includes your back joining strips, you're going to need another 1.25 yards, and that can be the same fabric, or you can mix and match your backing fabric. So it's up to you. If you want a coherent look on the back, you can use the same fabric, or you can have a more of a patchwork look by using different fabric. If you're really going to hang it on the wall, probably really doesn't matter. You can use up your scraps. Top joining strips and the binding fabric, you're going to need 1/3 yard. And again, what we've pictured here are the thread and fabrics that we're going to be using throughout the project. And we'll be using most of these colors tonight. For the thread, we'll be using the blue fabric on the top for the top fabric, and the striped fabric or the chevron-shaped fabric, that's going to be our backing fabric throughout all of the projects. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the next slide. Before you get onto embroidering, important notes. In these directions, we're going to be referring to the colors as they were saved in the design, and the color names may appear different on your machine. They probably will. And some of the color changes are in the design to make the machine stop between the steps. And for this particular project, it's going to be your basting stitch, and it's going to be your quilting stitches, so the first and last stitches. Now, you can change thread colors throughout or not. That's up to you. But if you have a multi-needle machine, be sure to remember to insert the stops, and sometimes they're called reserve stops or other things in the machines, to enter those into your stitch sequence when you get it on the machine so that the thread actually stops, because Multi-needle machine won't stop unless you do that, of course. So let's go ahead and embroider the design. Embroidering this is really easy. You want to load the faux piece block design that you saved onto your machine. Go ahead and hoop up your nylon no-shell mesh, and then you want to center a 7-inch by 7-inch square of batting in the hoop. It looks a little off-center here. That's because this hoop actually stitches a little off-center, but it is centered as far as our stitch area goes. Next, you want to center a 7-inch by 7-inch square of your top fabric in the hoop. You want to align it with the batting so it's in the same place, and then you want to secure both layers down to the hoop and the backing with embroidery perfection tape. All right, so go ahead and secure those down. Go ahead and attach the hoop to your machine and stitch out the first color, which is your basting stitch. When the basting stitch is done, you can remove the tape if you want. If your tape's out of the way of the basting stitch, no big deal. You can leave it on there if you don't want to do it till later, but that's totally up to you. You can see we've removed it here. Next, what you want to do is stitch out the next 3 colors, changing the thread colors as you desire. So the second color choice is going to stitch out the center blue diamond. The third color choice is going to stitch out the green triangles. And the fourth choice stitches out the orange triangles. And if you're wondering why we started with the second color choice, the basting stitch was our first one. Okay? So again, you can choose thread colors that contrast or match your fabric. Contrasting is a good way to go for most of these, so it looks like a separate piece of fabric. Again, thread color choices, fabric choices, up to you. When that's done, you want to remove the hoop from the machine, but don't unhoop the block. You want to leave everything nice and hooped up. Turn the hoop upside down so you're looking at the back. Center a 7 by 7-inch square of your backing fabric right side up over the design. So you want to get that all centered with what's on the top. Secure it in place with embroidery perfection tape, and you want to stretch it out as tight as you can get it on the back. Then put the hoop back in the machine and finally stitch out the last color, which is going to be your quilting stitches, and that's going to hold the whole sandwich together once we take it out of the quilt, or out of the hoop rather. So once it's out of the hoop, you'll have a complete sandwich, top fabric, batting, and backing fabric. And the nylon no-show mesh we're going to be using a lot throughout these projects. We're going to go ahead and leave that in our blocks because it is so light that you will definitely not know it's there, and it's a great foundation for doing these kind of in-the-hoop projects. So lastly, we need to finish the block. So remove the hoop from the machine, unhoop the block, and then you want to trim the block a 1/4 inch from the stitching on all 4 sides. The easiest way to do that is with a transparent quilting ruler. So you want to line it up with your 1/4 inch in from the edge mark along with the line of stitches on one edge. So get it nice and straight lined up with the stitches. Hold it in place, get your rotary cutter and cut off the excess. Turn it and repeat that on all 3 other edges. So when you're done, your block will be slightly less than 6.5 inches and trimmed a 1/4 inch out beyond the stitches. You want to repeat this entire procedure 3 more times to make a total of 4 blocks if you want to create the finished product. So that completes our assembly. I want to thank everybody for attending. We again hope you'll use the video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate this project at home. Again, you want to download those PDF instructions, and you do that by going to the Floriani My Club site and go to the My Decorative Quilter section and download the current month project. And we hope that you'll come back next month for the next block in the series, and we hope you'll come back month after month because, again, we're going to do 6 blocks. And I want to thank everybody again for attending, and we hope you have fun with this series. And we'll see you next
Mark, I have an idea.
What?
I think we need to make a challenge to see who can make the best finished product. So everyone chooses their own fabrics and puts together this block, and we'll pick a winner at the end if they submit pictures of their finished quilt block. Or not quilt block, but quilt. At the end of the 6 webinars. What do you think?
Okay, sounds good to me. I guess we'll provide them details at the end on how to submit their final pictures, and tell them what they're going to win, because I'm sure you just thought of this and we have no idea what the prize will be.
Exactly.
But it'll be something really cool.
We will come up with something really good. We really want to encourage everyone to participate in these, because there's going to be really good learning experiences on how to do different types of blocks, and that's kind of the purpose of this. So to help everyone along, we'll come up with a really good prize, and everyone who creates this quilt will and sends us pictures, we'll choose a winner, and we'll make sure we get them a really, really good prize.
Okay, I have another really great idea.
Okay.
That is, we don't want you to send us the pictures. We want you to post the pictures to the Floriani Facebook page.
That would be even better.
So if you go to Facebook and type in Floriani Embroidery, you'll find our Floriani Facebook page. And here's a new rule I just made up for the contest, DJ. You can overrule me if you want, but in order to win, you have got to post your block as you go. So we want everybody to post their blocks as they go, and then if you've got all 6 blocks shown up there, then you put up your final project. Then you'll get entered into the drawing, or we'll choose who wins the final prize. How's that sound?
I think that would be great, and please keep in mind that there are, just remember that there's going to be 6 of them, and there's going to be 4 blocks you need to make of each to make the final quilt. So,
right, but as you do it, though, the picture of 1 block on Facebook is all you need to do, because we don't know how you're going to go to put them together yet.
Yep, and I'll make sure we come up with a good prize, and I'll probably get in trouble for it later, but oh well, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad it'll be you and not me.
All righty. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending, and we can't wait for you to see next month's project that we've been working on. It's come together really good, and you're going to learn a really neat technique next month. So we're very excited about these, and we hope that you're excited about these new blocks we're going to do each month. And thank you, Mark. You did a wonderful job tonight, and we'll see you all next time.
See you later.
Bye-bye.